Good morning, church family. Pastor Corbin here with you, and I just want to say that it is so good to be worshiping with you, even as we continue to worship from home during this transition period to Westford. But if this is your first time checking us out, we want to give you a special thank you and encourage you to reach out to us and let us know that you are worshiping with us. In fact, even if you're not new and maybe you just like to know about how to get a little more connected, you can sign up for our email chains or get in touch with one of our pastors. You can text hello to the number on the screen or visit us on our website and fill out a connect card there so that we can follow up with you. Well, with that, I have a little bit of some exciting news that we want to share with you. And that is we will be having our first set of Sunday services at our new church in Westford this coming Sunday, January 19th. Services at 9 and 10:30 a.m., just like they used to be. So as Pastor Rob mentioned last week, that we want to hold off this coming week on kind of advertising this opening to the public, our friends, our families. This first week will be a little more of a test run of our new facility and technology. Even most of the final finishes in the building will actually be completed the following week. So you'll be seeing on the 19th, the floors are not yet completed. Some painting will be done. Furniture will still need to be set up. As one of our staff members said, it's kind of like walking into a new home or apartment that, we got everything there, but we're just not quite ready to host a massive party just yet. In fact, if you'd like to know how you can help get us ready for the move or whatever there might be to do, check out your emails. Look for something from Pastor Rob that should have a link there for you to be able to sign up with one of our moving teams. Either way, we as staff and our elders, we just can't wait to see all of you next week. Second, we want to know how we can continue to pray for you during this period that we've been away. We believe in the importance and power of prayer, and we know that we have the amazing blessing of praying for each of you. So you can let us know specifically how to pray for you by scanning the QR code on the screen or visiting us at our website or filling out a prayer request there. Whether you have something specific that you want to let us know about, or you have a praise to share about how God has been working in your life, we really want to encourage you to let us know how we can be praying for you and with you. Lastly, we want to remind you of the importance of your continued faithful giving during this time. During this transition, your partnership in giving, it's more important than ever. And you can give by scanning the QR code right here on the screen, visiting us online at our website, or you can continue to send your checks to our old location in Chelmsford. Your giving, it's what allows us to continue our transition to Westford, reach our communities with Christ, support our missionaries and outreach programs, and to continue to run our various ministries here. Well, with that, Pastor Rob this morning is going to continue our series, Hang 10, Embracing God's Wisdom and Ways. And I can't wait to hear this message. So let's get right to it.
Good morning, church family. It is January 12th, 2025. And unfortunately, I'm down here for one of my last filmings that you have to watch online. Hopefully next Sunday, we will be in our new facility, and I'm thrilled for that. I'm excited for that. And I want you to be a part of that. But I'm asking on this soft opening that you just come like bare minimum amount of people. Don't, this is not the time to invite your friends. This is not the time to invite distant family that you want to come into town for this. Let's do this. Let's just have our church family. We're not advertising this on a website anywhere, on your social media. Just have the family come together and have a time of worship and dedication together. We'll be dedicating the rooms, etc. as a part of the services. It's going to be special. But this will be our first run through with everything, and it's going to be bare minimum. The parking lot won't be done until the spring, so be careful. There's no curbs. Be careful with your parking. There's also no there's no coffee that we'll have set up this week because the floors are not will need to still be polished the following week. So we just aren't going to put in all our furniture yet. So anyway, just have all of that in mind when you come down. We're having our 9 and 10:30 a.m. service. And for our church family, I'd really like for you to be a part of it. Okay. Now, I'm going to dive into the next part of our series that we have going on, which I'll reintroduce very quickly. But if you haven't watched last week's message, please go back to our our YouTube page and watch that so you understand what the series is about going forward. Okay, you can watch this one, but it helps if you see last week's. All right, let me pray and then we'll get diving into this. So, Father, I thank you for this church family. We have been through a whole lot of waiting, years and years, and it's down to days and days, and each day feels like a year sometimes. So just pray that you would lead us, guide us as we move forward. And as I dive into this passage today in Exodus, I pray that you would take and bring it alive for us, because I think what's here is so powerful. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so let's get cranking through this, and I want to take you to that childhood memory that maybe you have of being stuck outside in the cold. You're being stuck outside in the cold without a coat on. And as a child, how cold that can be. And probably if you're a parent, now that when your child says, oh, hey, I'm going to head outside, you're like, whoa, put on a coat, get something on so that you are warm enough. I mean, we need you to know it's too cold. And you can do that for a child up to about age 12 or 13. But after that, you're not zipping up kids' coats. It's just not that appropriate, is it? So what we do now is take a look at teenagers and we step back and we go, hey, what are you doing out there in the snow with no coat on? Right? I really encourage you. You should have a coat. But what is the teenager response? The classic response is, I don't need a coat. I'm not even cold, right? We have all heard this. We've all seen it. In fact, maybe you were that one. I mean, I remember dropping off my kids at school and cold winter days at the high school and the middle school. And it was without fail, you would see some kid in shorts. There's snow on the ground, shorts, t-shirt, and flip-flops, I defy all, conventional rules. And I just don't buy into it, right? We've all seen that. And built into that is this sense, already what is going to happen. How this is all going to unfold, right? It's like I've said to my kids over the years when they've gotten into predicaments, including not wearing a coat, I'm like, I already know the end of the story. Right? I already know that if you're going to go out there in sneakers and a t-shirt and you're going to be cold, because they don't want to be caught in some big puffy jacket and some gloves looking like a child, right? That's what they think. But you already know, but they think they know better, as if somehow time has changed and kids are thicker and warmer skinned, whatever. This type of rebellious thinking, it's very subtle. Sometimes it's overt, I guess, but it is the backdrop as we continue in our series, Hang 10, embracing God's wisdom in the waves. We're going to work through all 10 of these commandments over the next 10 weeks, including week 11 was last week, and go through and work through these 10 commandments in ways that I am betting at least half of these, if not more of them, I will share some things that you will say, I didn't know that. This is one of my favorite things to teach on. Well, I say that every once in a while, don't I? But I haven't taught it at Grace Community or at Orchard Church for reaching back, I suppose 16 years. So I can't wait to dive into these for you and with you. So that's where we're headed. And we're going to start with the very first commandment. And we're going to call it number one. Number one, we're going to go right into Exodus chapter 20, verse 3. God has given these commands to Moses to give to the people. And this first one I put in its King James version. It's how I learned it when I was a child. It's the traditional language you sometimes find when 10 Commandments are first posted. So you'll see it. And it reads like this: Thou shalt have no other gods before me. That thou shalt have, like that 1500s language that we still use, right? Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Now, if we were to look at that same passage in another translation, New Living Translation, for instance, it says, do not have any other gods but me. And depending on your translation or paraphrasing that you have, you can read through that and see all kinds of different ways to say this. But generally on this passage, they all kind of center around this phrase, do not have any other gods before me, okay? Now, if we just step back and go, looking at this, if we were to dive in, how could anything with so few words be confusing? I mean, but I'm telling you, if you pull up to it, it is going to be a confusing message of all kinds of roadways to go down. And it really can be. So the best thing for us is to step out of that kind of confusion and kind of zoom up into the air and look down on the scene, on this passage, and just kind of ask this basic question when you look at this verse, chapter 20, verse 3, do not have any other gods but me, or do not have any other gods before me. What do you see? Like, just take a look at it on your screen. What do you see? Do not have any other gods but me. I'll tell you, I thought about this a lot, and I've worked through it, and to really understand kind of the initial look at it, you have to appreciate that God's first audience to hear this were the Israelites, right? They have come out of Egypt, 400 years of slavery. They're in the wilderness. They do not have an identity. They do not have dignity. They are trying to navigate. And I've said last week that the giving of the Ten Commandments was mostly about restoring a broken people. I mean, they were broken for generations of brokenness. Okay, so that's what this is. And this is the first command: do not have any other gods but me, or do not have any other gods before me. And I'm looking at that picture and I'm thinking, this group of people, which was easily swayed probably at this age or at this stage of their generational brokenness, could see just about every nation around them was involved in polytheism, meaning they believed in many gods. If you've done any historical research, you know that for them, there is a sense that gods exist for different things in this world. So 3,000 years ago, you had most of the countries around where the Israelites were walking would have had many gods, including coming out of Egypt. You had gods for the sun, you had gods for war, you had gods for fertility, you had gods for the rains, you had gods for all kinds of life situations. Because to the human mind, it doesn't make sense that one God could be all and represent and manage all of those things. And being easily swayed or a vulnerable group, it would make sense that they would look at other nations or hear about Egypt and go, well, it's a place of many gods. I mean, like, isn't that more logical? And so God in the outset states very clearly, there is no other God but me, and don't bring any other gods before me. This is first and foremost. And that's kind of our helicopter view looking down on it. What's interesting is you leap ahead to Acts chapter 17, roughly 1,000 years later, when Paul is teaching, the Apostle Paul, in Athens. Now, what's happened in those 1,000 years is that, you had the rise of Greece, and they had all of their gods, if you ever studied about the Greek gods. And then Rome came and took over, and they had their own set of gods, and some of them overlapped. And so you had a sea of gods that were worshipped in and through Rome and all the Greek people that still lived there. And Paul steps in to Athens, which is considered one of the great philosophical centers of the world for all time. And he went to the center of this city where they have what's called the Areopagus, or it's called Mars Hill translated. And that's where there would be a gathering daily of philosophical thinkers, and they would sit in the round, and a speaker would be invited to share new ideas. Paul was teaching ideas that were foreign to people. And so he was invited, in and through the city, he was invited to come to the Areopagus to speak. Let's go, Paul, right? And so he goes in there, and I want you to hear what he's saying. And then this first commandment starts to make better sense. He says to this group of polytheists, like, they believed in many, many gods. In fact, right before he shares these verses, he says, I noticed on my way into the city, you have an altar for almost every God. In fact, you have so many altars for gods. You even have an altar for the unknown God. I'm here to tell you about that God. And then he starts in verses 24 and 25 and says this: the God who made the world and everything in it. I could stop right there, right? What's he saying? You have a smattering of gods, but there's one God, only one. The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth and does not live in temples built by human hands. And he is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself, listen to this, gives everyone life and breath and everything else. He walks into a city of 700, 500,000 people, into the heart of this city, and inserts into a group of thinkers the concept they had never considered, and that is there's only one God who started everything and controls everything. And I am telling you, as clear as would be 3,000 years ago to 2,000 years ago, or in Paul's case, 1,000 years before him to when he spoke here, I'm telling you, this would blow every listener's mind. Like, how could one God be so powerful and so knowledgeable as to have all of that, right? So that, if you were to take kind of a flyover view of this passage and just go, okay, what a great way to start, you would be right. This is what this passage is initially about, and still true to this day. But is there something more? And I ask that because here's the other question. Is polytheism really your issue? I'm betting it's not. I'm betting that today, with between the two major, most dominant religions in this world, whether it's Christianity or Islam, they are purely monotheistic and are one God worshiping. And that is kind of how the world thinks. Hinduism has many gods. Some of the others have many gods, but by and large, the audience I'm talking to here probably does not have a God for the sun and the moon and the stars, right? So is this really our issue? I don't think that it is a pressing issue, but I do think it's very comforting and encouraging and clarifying for us. But the other question is then, how does this commandment ring true for you and me then? Is there anything? Let's look at it again. Thou shalt have no other God before me, or you should have no other God before me. I think there is something here, and it's found in one word in here, and it's the word before. You should have no other God before me. I mean, literally translated, it's like, do not bring a God before me, or especially this, do not have a God that you focus in on and then it blocks your view of me. That's what this really is saying to you and to me, where it becomes relevant. You say, well, I don't know if I do that. So I ask the question, do we place gods ahead of or before our God? Do we do that? And I would say, yes, I think we actually do this. Or the next question is, do we make gods? In order to do that, I have to ask, do we make gods out of things in our lives? We do. But to try to understand it, I'm going to take you back to the classic movie of Finding Nemo. And one of the side characters is a group of seagulls that are in the movie, if you recall this. And they, every time I go to the beach and I see seagulls, this movie comes into mind. If you haven't seen Finding Nemo, that's what you're going to do tonight. You will not regret it, right? So, but in the movie, they make an emphasis of the kind of thinking that seagulls do is they see a shiny object and it draws all of their attention, just hyper focused. In fact, in the movie, they just kept saying, as soon as they saw something, their mind, right? It's this hyper focus on something that grabs their attention. That's what can happen to us, even as Christians. Do not have any other God before me, in between your sights on me and me looking at you. Don't place a God. Do we do this? Well, I would propose that we have made gods out of things that grab our attention so wholly and so powerfully that it distracts us from God. Let me give you some examples. I would open up by saying career and success. Right? This is sometimes something we hyper focus or become so focused on at some stage in our life that we actually don't include God in it. We sort of go off on our own, sort of like the kid who refuses the coat. Just that little rebellious nature, like, I've got it, you don't get it, right? I know what I'm doing. Have we ever gone solo on our careers, our pursuit of success, or a few others, our money and material wealth? How much is God blocked from our view by our money or our pursuit of material things or our relationships? Becomes so consuming that we no longer look at God. Instead, we're looking into this relationship and we're so hyper-focused. We're so sure we know what we're doing that we go out in the snow without a coat. Pleasure, comfort, power and control, approval, popularity, or thinking about social media and how it grabs you and you're like, the need for popularity in that sense, like the need to be recognized. Does that become a God for anybody? What do you think? Knowledge and intellect, causes and ideologies become so hyper-focused that we drive that we might even try to label it as this is what God does. These are the things that we look at and grab our attention, and we can, I'm not saying all of us, but we can go through times that we actually don't even think about God in the process. In fact, God is not in these. He's actually number 9 on our list. He's just added in to the end of the list. All of these, I've got time for these things, and then I've got to, don't want to forget. I need to go to church, or I need to think about God today. This is us. So now let's take that picture again of the kid in the snow, and let's look at it from God's perspective for a second. Let's just think about God and his perspective. And now we're not looking at a teenager. He's looking at us. And what do? We think we know, don't we? Like, as adults, we've sort of figured out life. We think we know. And God's looking at us saying, I know we're placing things before him. Like he knows we are. In fact, he goes, I already know how this story is going to end. Your pursuit of these things, these new gods in your life, these pursuit of them, I already know how this story ends. It's going to leave you wanting. It's going to leave you more empty than you think it will. I mean, it might bring you some, but it's not going to be what I can provide. In fact, I think the sense of walking outside in these, the kind of way of looking at walking outside without a coat, we're kind of saying, you know what? I don't trust God on these matters. I mean, this passage, do not have any other gods before me, is God saying, don't lose sight of me by bringing something in between you and me. I mean, how powerfully direct is this to us? Do we do this? I mean, we're essentially saying, God, I don't need a coat. Like, you don't understand. Like, I'm so sharp. I'm so smart. Like, I'm going to handle this whole business situation on my own. I'm going to go and make this purchase on my own. I'm going to go and figure out this situation with my spouse or with my girlfriend or boyfriend or I'm going to go and solve this conflict with my child on my own. I've got this. I don't need a coat. I mean, this is the essence of what humans do, isn't it? And it's where Eve started in the garden. No. I know I can have that apple, right? It's nothing new. That's why God's word is so time transcendent because it speaks not only to a group of people who are actually tempted by polytheism, but it speaks to you and me today, 3,000 years later, to say, don't have any other gods before me. Now, I just asked the question next is, well, why does it matter? I'm just going to navigate and do this. And I'm going to tell you, I'll quote myself from last week. You said the 10 Commandments, Rob, are not to be read like an or else list, right? Like, do this or else I'll zap you, right? Yeah, we're not supposed to read these like that. That's such an unhealthy, missing the point way to read these commandments. No, there's something else here. Why does this matter? Because, when that kid is going outside in his without a coat on, that let's say, I can think of times with my own kids. Let's say that my son wants to go outside and he wanted to play football this one time with his friends in the snow. And I'm like, you really should put boots on. No. I'm fine in my sneakers, right? And I really think that you should have a heavier coat on. No. I need to be able to move, right? And all the normal stuff. But in my mind, I'm like, you know what? I know the experience would be better if you trusted me on this. I know you'd have a better time. I know it'd be more fulfilling for you. Instead, you're going to be in pain when that snow gets in your shoes. And I think God looks at our situation and goes, we say, I don't need a coat. But what he's saying is, I know you'll survive. But imagine how much better the overall situation. I'm not saying it leads to success. I'm just saying your fulfillment and your experience. Jesus said directly, I came so that you might have life and life to the fullest. Meaning, like, you can carve your way with your gods, but a full life is found in God. He knows that whatever we're planning without him will never be fully in step with him or on our own. In that sense, like, we've determined we don't need the coat. And what's amazing is he invites us back every time. You were right. I needed the coat. I could really use your help, God. And he never refuses. Right? It's just that amazing. So let's go back to our list right now. Like, our gods are a lot of these things. You might have something I missed on this list. But could we reorganize it and think differently? What if we pulled number 9 out of there and we just shifted everything down and said, God should be at the forefront of how we approach our career and success. God should be helping us navigate our financial and material wealth. I've talked to you on and on about your giving should not be something I determine for you or a calculation that you figured out from a website. Somebody said, this is how much you should give. And our message to you, my message to you, is that you first pursue God. Trust him and say, God, how would you like me to give? How would you like me to invest? Is your retirement program and plan built on God's wisdom or yours? Let's say you're 25 years old and you're just beginning to start your financial plan. Imagine that you went to God first and prayed about the steps you should take. Imagine that the relationship that you were considering, even starting, it began bathed in prayer. Imagine that the power and control that you seek, you actually pray about it and say, God, why am I doing this? Or knowledge and intellect that, God, would you lead me in the areas that you want me to grow in and apply it to our relationship even, or how I interact with people. God goes into these things and his view, our view, joined together in looking at these things. This is what it means to not bring any other gods before me. Instead, bring your things to me and we will approach them together. It's awesome. Rather than letting these things take God's place, we bring them to him and invite his guidance in them. Exodus 23 that we've talked about over and over. Do not have any other gods before me. Do you hear the heart of that? Could I retranslate this in a paraphrase that I wrote This is not biblical, straight from the Bible. I'm just trying, based on everything I've taught here, let me try to put this up as Rob's paraphrase, okay? Resist allowing any other loyalties, fears, or shiny objects to lead you to believe you've got this. Let me repeat that first sentence. Resist allowing any other loyalties, fears, or shiny objects to lead you to believe that you've got this, that you don't need a coat. Place me first, and I will guide you in every single area of your life. You hear, like, that's my paraphrase of do not have any other gods before me. Wait, I think somebody's asking a question. Oh, yes, you in the back in the red shirt. What's your question? How do we learn to place God ahead of pressing things? How do we do this, Rob? I mean, it's nice to know that I should have God first. How do we do this? Well, let's close this message by giving you some very practical things, okay? I call them the how-tos. I mean, who doesn't love a few how-tos? But how do you shift God from the list to making him the help and guide of the list? How do we do that? Well, there's a handful of things. Let's start with number one. Matthew 6:33 reads like this. Seek God's kingdom first. This is Jesus' teaching. Seek God's kingdom and his righteousness. And look how I put that in capitals, first. And all these things will be given to you as well. Start at the start is what you do. Start at the start. What do I mean by that? Well, if you seek God first in everything, I think that's a step ahead, right? That's where you begin. But I'm also going to go very practical and say, I would encourage you to start every day with God. The beginning of every day, start with him. Start with him and say, God, lead me and guide me. And then you work through the things that you know are coming up that day. What is stressing you? What is coming up, the difficult things? Who are you going to be talking to, good or bad? Where do you need to stop? What tests do you have? Just whatever it is, start your day by saying, God, I'm going to bring these to you first before they become the shiny object of my day, good or bad. I need you for that. Start at the start. I recently took part in one of our beloved members of our church, Mary Murray. We had her funeral just recently. And as I was sitting there in the funeral home, before I was to give the message, on all the walls were video, TV monitors that had a cycling set of pictures of Mary throughout life. Her with her family, her with her friends, on vacation, just Mary, all over. It was wonderful. It was really beautiful. And then her oldest son, David, got up to speak, and he spoke all about these amazing things, a beautiful eulogy. But one of the things that he said that caught my attention for this sermon is that he said that his mom, they found her journal. And in her journal, when they opened it up, they noticed that every morning she wrote every day in her journal to God. And she wrote these words, good morning, Jesus, or good morning, God. And then she put a smiley face. And it struck me when I was up speaking in the message part, the pictures were still scrolling on the TVs around the nursing or the funeral home. And at one point I pointed to them and I said, do you see these pictures? Who she's with, her children, friends, family, her parents. I go, if you think about her journal for a second, Mary first met with God before she ever met with those people in those pictures. Like every picture you saw, she had already started her morning before that picture with God. Start at the start. So I can't encourage you enough. Start with prayer, some reading, and there are countless amounts of ways that you can start to make that a part of your life. Secondly, think about filters for a second. Maybe you have a Brita filter at home or a Pure filter hooked onto your faucet. You want clear drinking water. Some of us have whole house filters. Like when the water enters, it goes through the filtering system. So when you're drinking the water, or using it, it's clean, right? Well, think about God in your life for a second. Psalm 32:8 reads like this: I will instruct you, this is God speaking, and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eye on you. This is God saying, if you come to me, you're putting this through the filter. One more passage, Isaiah 30:21. Whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. I don't know if you hear that. That's my dog in the distance. I told you he does this. Right, okay. Let me come back to this passage. Whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. This is the kind of guidance we're looking for. So not only do you start at the start, but make God your filter about the things you're going to face each day and beyond. Start your day that way. Third, Isaiah 55:3, come to me with your ears wide open. Listen, and you will find life. I will make an everlasting covenant with you. What's he saying? He's saying, create listening moments, or I'm saying my summary of that is create listening moments. Find things or moments in which when you talk about it with God, let's say you're going to have a start of a day and you're praying about this conversation you're going to have with your mother. And it's maybe going to be a great conversation. But I would encourage you to pray about that conversation. Say, God, I want to give this conversation to you. I want to pray for my mom, and I'm going to talk to her, or whoever it is in your life. And then you say, okay, God, I'm listening. And then listen, 30 seconds maybe. And he may just reveal to you an area that you want to talk to. Years ago, I was talking to my mom, but I called her because I had been praying for her earlier, and I had a sense that God said to me, you need to call your mom. And so when I reached out to her, I said, Mom, are you doing okay? God nudged me to call her. She says, how did you know? I needed this call. So this is how we create listening moments. We listen for God. So we start at the start, and then we build in, this sense of filtering, having God filter this, and then we create listening moments. Fourth, and lastly, Galatians 6:2, carry each other's burdens. In this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. We actually look to other people in this journey to place God first in our lives. We ask people to speak into them. In chapter 5, verse 16, a little before what I just read, just shortly before in the same book, Galatians, therefore confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. So I would propose to you, number 4, is invite your people in, not just anybody. Who do you trust? It may be a spouse, but sometimes somebody of the same sex as you, somebody who's, guy to a guy or girl, a woman to a woman. That person can speak into your life. If you trust them and they pray for you, you can ask them to be God's filter for you as you share things that you're struggling with or going through, or investments or whatever it is. But you can invite the right people in. So, and then let me give you one more bonus piece, and I'll just say, create a God first journal. Maybe call it the Mary journal, right? Just begin to plot out, start your day and then journal things. And then the next day you just kind of continue going. Write about what you're facing. God, I need you. You'll actually want to come back maybe later in the day and write things down that you say, oh, God led me in this. Okay. So how to do this, how to make God clear in your eyes. Say, start at the start, make God your filter, create listening moments, invite your peeps, your people in, and create a God first journal. This to me is where we go when I look at do not have any other gods before me. This is kind of that in-depth dig, and it speaks to us even today. That is you changing how you approach life. We're no longer the kid traipsing through the snow without a coat. We're inviting God to lead us. And that's the first commandment in our Hang 10 series. I can't wait, hopefully on the 19th, to be in our new building and to bring you the second commandment. Let's pray. So God, be with my peeps, my church family, and I thank you for just leading and guiding us, and may you lead us forward as we look forward to our future. Let us be people who place you first before all of these things and not put those things before you. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you and have a wonderful week.